Welcome, creative adventurers. I'm Debbie Cohn with Cone Designs. Thank you for stopping by today. In today's video, I'm going to tell you all about quilt alongs and give you 5 tips for choosing the best one that works for you and how to prepare for it in 5 simple steps. It's that time of year when many people start to look for a quilt along that they can do throughout the year or for an extended period of time. But what's a quilt along? What's a sew along? Well, let me explain. A quilt along is a series of planned events in a certain time frame where people sew together with others, either virtually or in person. The difference between a quilt along and a sew along may or may not be of significance. Typically, a sew along refers to any type of sewing project, where a quilt along would probably refer mostly to a quilted project of some kind, often a quilt itself. A quilt along could be done daily or weekly or monthly. It depends on the quilt along. The quilt along could be online or in person. It could even be a hybrid. The most common type of quilt along would be called a block of the month. One block or a set of blocks is published each month, and the quilter makes those blocks. Then the next month, another block or another set of blocks is published. You can find quilt alongs galore by going on the internet and just Googling block of the month 2023 or winter block of the month or summer quilt along. Any of those search terms will work for you. Of course, check with your local quilt guild. Your local quilt guild might offer a block of the month challenge. Also, your local quilt shop might offer a block of the month as well. You could even get a group of friends together and do a block of the month around a particular quilt pattern that suits you. A common question is, do I have to pay for it? It depends on the type of quilt along. Many quilt alongs are free to participate and include the patterns as well. One online source for this is Fat Quarter Shop. They offer many quilt alongs that are free throughout the year. Other quilt alongs are subscription based, where a quilt shop or a designer or an online quilt shop might offer a subscription-based quilt along where you pay a set fee each month and you receive the blocks automatically in the mail. Others might offer the quilt along as a flat fee, which might include your pattern and even some specialty rulers if you need them. Another variation would be a flat fee subscription where you receive your quilt kit all at once, which includes your fabric and your pattern, and then videos are posted regularly to show you how to make it. Some quilt alongs might offer either video tutorials, live video tutorials, live chats about the pattern and the block of the month, or an optional in-person gathering of those in particular geographic areas. It all depends on the quilt along. Let's talk about some things to consider when you're going to choose a quilt along. The first thing to consider is the amount of time you'll have available to work on your quilt along. Will you be able to set aside regular time each week or each month, or will you choose to sew several blocks at once, wait a period of time, and then sew several more? It really depends on your schedule and the time available. You'll want to choose a quilt along that really works for you and your lifestyle and your schedule. Oftentimes, gathering your supplies, preparing the fabric, and getting ready to sew takes longer than you think. So I have some tips to help you in just a moment, but think of that as well as the actual construction of the blocks when you're considering how much time your quilt along will take. Next, consider your budget. Do you have fabric available in your stash, or do you need to purchase some for this quilt along? Will you need to purchase the pattern? Are there specialty rulers that you'll need or other specialty tools? Think about that when considering the cost of the quilt along altogether. If you have a limited budget, I suggest that you look at quilt alongs where you can use up your stash and the pattern is free. That will give you the most flexibility for a limited amount of money. Next, consider your purpose. Why are you doing the quilt along? Is it to use up your scraps, to sew a gift for a special occasion, such as a baby gift or a graduation gift or an anniversary, a birthday gift? Or is it to try a new skill that they're offering through this quilt along? Or maybe you're just doing it for practice and fun. The next thing to consider is the size of the finished project. Do you want to commit to a large quilt, or would a wall hanging size work better, or a baby or throw size? You may be able to adapt the pattern to suit the size you need. Remember, of course, that the more complex the pattern or The bigger the quilt project, it will be more time that you'll need to take for your quilt along. You'll need to budget that into your schedule. The last thing I suggest that you consider is your personal style of quilting. Do you prefer more traditional or modern? Do you prefer a whimsical style or a portrait style of quilt or quilt project? That may make a difference in your choice as well. Don't be afraid to try something new. Here's your chance on a quilt along. You don't be afraid to modify either the time frame of the quilt along. Take longer if you need to. That's okay. It's your project and your quilt. You could modify the quilt itself, reduce the number of blocks, simplify the blocks, eliminate borders, add borders, whatever works for you. You're the boss of your quilt. Now I have 5 tips for you to help you be successful with whatever quilt along you choose. My number 1 tip is to choose fabrics you'll love, because you're going to be working with these fabrics for quite a while. In some cases, it could be a year or more. You're going to be working with them on an ongoing basis. So choose what you love. That way you won't get tired of it, and it'll be a fun surprise the next time you open your project container and see those fabrics. My second tip is to put all of your quilt along project things in one specific place. A container, a shelf, whatever works best for you, so it's all there ready to go. My next tip is to set in your mind or in your calendar a regular date or day or time each week or each month, however you're going to do it, but set a regular time for you to work on your quilt along. Life gets busy, things happen, that's okay. You can shift your schedule and even your location. Having a time and place in mind will really help you keep up with the quilt along. And don't get discouraged if you get behind. That's okay. One tip that people say is if you do get behind, start with the most recent blocks and then go back and catch up as you have time. I've done it that way, and then I've also done it where I start with the ones I'm behind on and then I catch up. But you do what works best for you. For me, my personal style happens to be where I'll work on a few at the beginning, time goes by, things happen, and then I'll binge quilt and catch up on my blocks. More time goes by, I'll binge catch up, and that seems to be what works for me. But you do what works best for you. The next thing I strongly suggest is you label all the parts of your project. Label the backing, label the quilt blocks that you're working on, mark up your pattern, mark it every time you do a section of it, mark it off so you know where you've stopped on the pattern. Mark the different fabrics. Some of that may be done for you in your pattern, but if not, you can do it yourself, labeling your block parts A, B, C, D, or 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever works for you. Don't forget to label your blocks as well, and any sashing, background, borders, and binding. That way you'll know at a glance and you won't have to think to yourself, what was that for again? I forgot. It'll be quick and easy. You choose the labeling method that works best for you. There are commercial labels like Alphabetes through Fat Quarter Shop. You could print your own, you could hand label it. You could use your computer and print out your own labels of whatever you want. You could use a label maker. You could even use light tack masking tape and label it and put them on there. The light tack tape will not leave residue on your fabric. Also want to clip the parts together, however you want to do that, with binder clips or specialty clips, wonder clips, whatever works for you. And then store it all in one place, whether it's trays or bins or baskets, so that you have it ready at a moment's notice. My last tip to help you have a successful quilt along would be to buy or make design boards. Here's an example of a design board. This is just foam core wrapped with some batting, and then I happen to use duct tape because that's what I had handy, but you could use washi tape, you could even sew a binding around it to make it neat and tidy. Because it has batting on it, it will help your fabric stick. That way you can organize your blocks and it'll be quick and easy to find out where you're at when you come back to the quilt along. Put a binding around the edges and it sticks quite well. You could even stack these horizontally like this if you're working on several blocks at a time, and then slide it into a tray, a desk, or a drawer for quick and easy storage. Again, you can find them commercially for sale. Check your local quilt shop first. I know that Fat Quarter Shop has them for sale. Lor Holt of Bee in My Bonnet Designs has a tutorial that shows you how to make your own as well. So those are the 5 things to consider when choosing a quilt along, and the 5 tips that I feel will best help you be successful with your quilt along. If you like this video, please give it a big thumbs up. Leave me a comment. Tell me what is your best tip for choosing a quilt along or making a quilt along successful. I'd love to know. We can share each other's wisdom and knowledge. Please tell a friend as well and head on over to my blog at dconedesigns.com, where you'll find a couple of free patterns for your personal use. Just a quick note for those who are interested, behind me is my Scrappy Sizzler from my Scrappy Sizzler quilt along from this past summer. The pattern for it will be available soon in my shop. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time. I have mine up vertical.